Hello everyone. This is a lecture on political corporate social responsibility and the business of peace. My name is Trittin-Ulbrich and I'm an assistant professor for business ethics at Leuphana University. Welcome to this class. Today we live in a globalized world. Globalization can be defined as the process of intensification of cross-border social interactions due to declining costs of connecting distant locations through communication and the transfer of capital, goods, and people. This process has led to a growing transnational interdependence of economic and social actors, an increase in both opportunities and risks, and the intensification of competition. In a world without foreign trade and foreign direct investments, the key aspects of globalized business, the division of labor between national politics and private business was clear. Companies would need to follow the jurisdiction of their national states. States could enforce companies to follow the legislative rules and procedures and regulations, and then companies would be free to follow their interests within these boundaries of the state regulation. In today's globalized world, we can observe a decline in the governance capacity of national states, which is partly compensated by the emergence of new forms of global governance above and beyond the state. In today's globalized world, we can see that no state has a monopoly of power. A pluralism of systems of jurisdictions and communities of value exist. Think about the European Union and its legislation and regulation, in addition to national regulations. Then there's also the observation that nation states experience a deficit in executing their supervisory authorities and consequently enforce their regulations. And finally, we can observe that globally acting firms are not bound to one legal system. They can actually choose amongst many according to their economic interests. In this sense, globalization has led to a functional crisis of the nation-state. The functional crisis of the nation-state, which is also marked by the inability of national governments to regulate the economic processes within their territories, including regulating externalities or the provision of public goods, is accompanied with the dislocation of value chains in states that are not able to regulate in so-called failed states. Indeed, today, many corporations engage in global markets through their global supply chains. Globalization has it made both easier and attractive for smaller firms to operate internationally rather than just domestically, whether this means establishing physical operations in overseas markets, sourcing goods from suppliers around the world, or selling into foreign markets. At the same time, this means corporations often engage in conflict-ridden areas and regions in which they face very little oversight, and this they can make use for their own benefit. Often they face little state intervention, little oversight, and have better access to political parties due to looming corruption. This is problematic because those who are affected by economic activities have less and less control over businesses through the political system. This means while civil society may not agree what globally acting corporations do in their communities, they have no option to make their concerns heard and control how businesses act. On the one hand, this is because in many countries national regulation is weak, but also because businesses threaten to leave these contexts and find better places to do their business in. This has led to a legitimation crisis for business and society. The changing roles of political and economic actors have also led to changes in theories regarding the social responsibility of business. Traditional corporate social responsibilities theories build on the distinction between private and the public sphere, and they assume that corporations engage only in political activities for self-interest. And they assume that corporations assume social responsibilities only if these advance the short and long-term value of the firm. Political CSR, or corporate citizenship, instead focuses on the political role that corporations take over, and suggests that corporations compensate the gaps in the national governance by voluntarily contributing to self-regulation and by producing public goods that are not delivered by governments. To address the functional crisis of the state and the legitimation crisis of business, today economic, political, and civil society actors work together and collaborate together in global governance. Global governance can be generally defined as the collective governing of relationships by designing, developing, and implementing rules of behavior that transcend national borders without foreign authority. Unlike national governance, with its monopoly on the use of force and the capacity to enforce regulations upon private actors within the national territory, global governance rests upon the voluntary contribution and relies on weak or even lacking enforcement mechanisms. The private sector engages extensively with political institutions on the local, regional, national, or global level to address social and ecological concerns, including the stimulation of peaceful development. This has led to an increasing interconnectedness between political, economic, social, and ecological processes and practices. A good example of such global governance scheme is the UN Global Compact. One issue in which businesses are increasingly involved as political actors is the issue of peace. Peace guarantees that a country can develop policies of economic growth. This is why businesses have consequently developed a keen interest in contributing to solutions that could help keeping or building peace in certain areas. However, in many regions around the world, corporations alongside civil society face war and ongoing conflict. This is a map of ongoing armed conflicts from October 2021. Please note that the map lists the Ukraine as a minor conflict, which obviously by today in April 2022 has turned into a full-fledged war. Many times business conduct fuels armed conflict. For example, the term conflict minerals alludes to the problem that many minerals that are needed for modern technologies such as computers or e-bikes are sourced from regions in which armed conflicts take place, either between the official government and military groups or between various other conflict parties. Conducting business in these regions, business often fuels such conflicts that often resolve around economic interests alongside political motives. In response, firms engage in self-regulatory initiatives on the industry level that hope to promote conflict-free sourcing. This can be considered one way in which corporations can engage in peace building, rather indirectly though. However, corporations today also engage in peace building more directly. Business of peace is a new paradigm in the global governance context. It reframes businesses as peace actors, and it emerges from two trends. First, the United Nations is increasingly outsourcing activities to corporate actors. UN activities ranging from expert consulting to auditing to logistics, camp management, security, or even the implementation and delivery of outputs are routinely outsourced to the private sector. And second, there's an increasing public demand towards multinational corporations to contribute positively in conflict zones. This call has been actually picked up by many corporations who themselves see themselves now as peace actors. Multinational corporations have operated in conflict zones for many decades and have many times done more harm than good to the local population in the pursuit of their own agendas. So far, they have often claimed that they are apolitical actors who are outside the sphere of violence when operating in conflict areas. However, these claims have been increasingly rejected. Non-governmental organizations and their criticism and lobbyism against corporations and their activities in fragile and conflict-affected areas have accumulated in demands for firms to go beyond the do no harm in operational areas and to translate have translated into a push for positive business contributions to root causes of conflict, often considered under the approach called conflict-sensitive business practices. While the United Nations system has before generally shunned businesses and approached them as actors that need guidance to do no harm, the business for peace paradigm now heralds them as potential peacemakers. The paradigm business of peace has culminated in the institutionalization of the Business for Peace initiative. In 2013, this institution was set up by the United Nations Global Compact and hopes to support businesses in order to play a critical role in contributing to the stability and security in conflict-affected and high-risk areas. Within this initiative, corporations engage in knowledge exchange regarding how they can contribute to peace and development in conflict-ridden areas. To conclude, in this lecture we have learned about the changing role of political and economic actors in a globalized world. We observed that both actors, in collaboration with civil society, increasingly engage in global governance and also address through global governance schemes the issue of peace. Business of peace is a new paradigm in the global governance context and constructs businesses as peace-building actors in society. I hope this lecture has provided you with insight and inspiration with regards to political corporate social responsibility and the business of peace. Thank you for your attention and have a good day.